a strength and conditioning specialist that specialises in training elite athletes. That is what I ask on a regular basis, is how do I do that? How do I become that? And it's a great question, because I was doing that back in the 80s, in the late 80s, when I had my own company called Sports Elite Strength and Conditioning Specialists. And there's lots of students and graduates that I have now says, how do I get in that game? Well, there's an old saying, a journey of 1,000 miles starts with one step. So the first thing you have to decide is that what you're really passionate about? Is what you really want to do? Because unless you're really passionate about training and conditioning and strength training for elite athletes, then you're not going to make it. And when I started my journey, seems like hundreds of years ago, back in the late 80s, I was a gym instructor at the time. I had a degree called a Bachelor of Human Movement Studies, but it wasn't necessarily a specialist degree in any particular area. It was a generalist type degree in health and fitness. But I was working in the gym, and I was very passionate about strength training, and I was very passionate about sport. So I thought, if I can combine those two passions together, then I'm going to get a double hit of passion. Wouldn't it be cool to live your life serving both passions, sport and strength training? So I decided then that was what I'm going to devote my future to. So how do you get started? Well, be before you are and you will become. So when I first started doing that, taking action, I believed that I wanted to become a great strength and conditioning coach. So you first of all have to believe it, and that may take a little bit of convincing, but the best way to do it is just to be it. So when I started with starting a business. I had to come up with a business name, and I came up with the name Sports Elite, Strength and Conditioning Specialist. Sports Elite made sense to me because I wanted to train elite sports people. And that was my goal. I want to train Olympic level athletes and national level athletes. Now, depending on who you want to train, whether it be rugby union players or whether it be tennis players or swimmers, or it doesn't really matter. First of all, decide who do you want to train. It might be a variety of different sports. When I started, I was not necessarily specific on a sport. I just wanted to train elite sports. So that's how I started. So I had to think and behave and present and act like I already was a strength and conditioning specialist. I read a great book back then called Success Secrets by Mark McCormick, who is the founder and owner of IMG, International Management Group, which is one of the first professional groups that started representing elite athletes and elite sports people in doing all their marketing and sponsorships and managing their money and all sorts of stuff. And he over time became one of the most powerful people in sport. He signed up Jack Nicklaus, and he managed Tiger Woods and all sorts of these great athletes of all different sports. So I thought, if I wanted to become really good at this, I better have to start studying who has become great at this. So that was my first book, and I learned so many great things out of that book. And I followed that up with another book that he wrote, which is What They Don't Teach You at Harvard Business School. So I started to study the great managers of sports, sports managers, and he had written a great book. He's very world famous. I got lots of great ideas out of that and how to put that into my company, my business called Sports Elite. So I started to just act and behave and present as if I'm already that. So be before you are and you become. And if you act like that, you start to see the things that will reinforce that, and you see the opportunities that you can take action on that will confirm that. And so here's some ideas of what you can do to live your dream as a strength and conditioning coach. Now, you need to, I guess, have proof that you are who you want to be. And you can acquire proof or validation or justification through a number of ways. You may already be an elite athlete. So straight away, then that's some form of proof that, hey, you know what you're talking about, because you have been where you want to help these other elite athletes be. So at that particular time in my career, I was an international level kickboxing and martial art champion. So I had already walked in the shoes of athletes to get to the pinnacle of their sporting careers. So that was one form of credibility that I had, is I was like you. I was an elite athlete. I've lived and breathed and walked in your shoes, and I've gotten to the top of my game, and now I'm going to help you get to the top of your game through the processes that I've learned how to get myself in peak physical condition for my sport, therefore I can help you get in peak physical condition for your sport. So that was one form of justification that gave myself a bit of credibility as though I was a elite athlete. Another one might be your track record or your achievements or helping other people achieve, meaning that you have maybe coached some teams in the past or trained some athletes in the past, and that gives you credibility that, hey, I've trained some people, whether it be soccer players or rugby union players or whatever sport that means, and you may have a track record of helping other people become champions in their game. So if you already have that under your belt where you've been involved in sport at the elite level in some form, or help someone get to the elite level in some form, then you can massage that into a marketing way to promote yourself as a strength and conditioning coach. Or you can go down the path of also, or three, of getting certification or qualifications or some form of verification that you are educated in that particular field. And at the particular time in my career, I had a Bachelor of Human Movement Studies, which again, as I said, was a general degree. But people didn't know that. So I could use all of these, credentials to massage them into a way to market myself. And my mentor in marketing, Winston Marsh, the guru of marketing, he shared with me and taught me, he says, how you market what you do many times is more important than what you do. So your perception is everything. So I took all of those things on board, and then I had to create this perception, be before you are and you become, and how I market myself, how I promote myself, how I present myself, how I walk myself, and how I conduct myself, so people will say, hey, this person is going somewhere, or this person is someone. So even though at that particular time I didn't necessarily have any track record of training elite athletes, even though I was an elite athlete, and I had a degree, but it wasn't really specialised in anything in particular anyway, but I had enough to market myself. So where do you start? Well, you start with what's in front of you. In this day and age, obviously going into 2020s, then there's lots of tools that you can use to market yourself with social media. Back in my day, we didn't have social media, we didn't have email, we didn't have mobile phones or anything like that, so I had to do it more with the laborious way. However, because it was laborious and less people were doing it, probably because it was laborious, and I'm pretty much a hard worker and I'll keep going until I get it done. Also at that particular time, there was no such thing as strength and conditioning coaches for elite athletes or elite sporting teams, so I had to not just market myself, I also had to convince the team that this is a worthwhile investment to invest in a strength and conditioning coach to maximise the physical peak performance of its athletes while reducing the injuries of those athletes. But where do you start? Well, you start with what's in front of you. In that particular time, I should just always present myself to the world as a strength and conditioning coach. So if someone says, hey, what's your name? My name's Kman. What do you do? So I'm a strength and conditioning coach who specialises in the physical training to get elite athletes to their peak physical condition so they can be the best for their sport and win their championship. So it was just word of mouth, and you heard about word of mouth marketing. And people say, well, word of mouth marketing is when other people talk about you and then they refer people to you. Well, my version of word of mouth marketing is the words that come out of your mouth. So whenever there's an opportunity to express to the world or people in front of you who you are and what you do and how you do it, then you take that opportunity. And I had rehearsed a little bit of a script of how I'd project. I'd link into people, say, hey, how are you? What's your name? They say, my name's Bob. How are you today, Bob? They says, I'm great. Then they feel obligated to ask you, so what's your name? My name's Kman. Says, what do you do, Kman? Well, I'm a strength and conditioning coach who specialises in the training of elite athletes to get to their peak physical condition so they can win their championship. Now, if they had any form of interest in that area, or they were a sports coach or linked to a team or anything like that, or a GM, they might go, well, you're the person that I've just been thinking about, or you're the person I'm now thinking about to come and help my team get to the elite level. So just word of mouth. And one of my first clients, which was very interesting, I was actually on the gym floor having a bit of a workout, and there's a guy doing a bit of training, and I said, hey, what's your name? And so I learned that you have to introduce yourself to everyone. Make sure everyone you know around you knows who you are and what you do. Simple as that. Make sure everyone you come in contact with knows who you are and what you do. Doesn't matter. Don't discriminate. Just let them know by showing interest in them. If you show interest in them, they'll show interest in you, and they'll give you permission to tell them about you after you've asked them about them. If I'm chatting to someone, for example, I was just having a workout, no conditions, there's no conditions attached to a conversation with anyone. There was no, okay, I'm going to talk to you because I can get something from you. I just learned from another great book called How to Win Friends and Influence People, is just chat to people. Just let people know what you do. Just chat to them, show interest in them, and they'll show interest in you. And I was chatting to this gentleman while doing a workout. I said, what's your name? He said, my name's Brett. I said, how you going, Brett? My name's Kman. He says, what do you do, Brett? And he says, well, I'm a professional squash player. I said, wow, that's interesting. Tell me about that. Well, I tour the world and I compete in the world stage in squash. I said, wow, that's really interesting. What are you doing at the moment? He says, well, I'm doing a strength training program to make me better for squash. I said, it's really interesting you bring that topic up. He said, why is that? Because it so happens that I have a company called Sports Elite, and I specialise in training elite athletes, people like yourself, to get into their peak performance and customise their program specifically for their sport so they can be their best for their sport and win the championship that they want to win. And he went, wow, that's interesting, because I've just got this generalised program given to me by a gym instructor. He says, hey, that's a great start. Is that a fantastic start? However, if you want to take it to the next level, then you have to adapt your program and specialise it specifically for the physical requirements for your sport. You went, wow, you do that? I said, absolutely. He said, hey, how about you organise a time? We can have a chat about it, have a bit of a workout, and I'll take you through some of the stuff that's going to help you get to the next level. He says, oh, absolutely, that sounds great. So straight away, there's my first client. And it wasn't because I chatted to him because he's a squash player. I chatted to him because he was just a person, a nice guy in the gym I started chatting to. And it so happens that he was an elite squash player who was at that time ranked in the top 10 in the world and went on into the higher levels after that and started winning world championships and all sorts of stuff. But he was technically my first client. So how cool is that? I start off with a top 10 squash player purely by just showing an interest in them without any particular conditions attached to it. Just chatting to people. So to start with, just start to chatting to people. Let everyone know in your local community who you are and what you do. And you'll be quite amazed if you do that with the right intent, without any conditions attached to it, then how word will soon spread and what doors will open up and people that you will meet. I know another instance, I was working at that time. I had my Sports Elite strength and conditioning business on the side, and I was a full-time gym instructor. And this gentleman walked in the gym, and he was what they call a casual visit. He was staying in the hotel where the gym was. He just paid his casual visit, and most of the time they come in and do their own thing. There's no option that you could upsell them to a membership because they didn't even live in that city where I was living at the time, the Gold Coast. But therefore, most gym instructors or salespeople, you leave them alone because they say, oh, well, we can't make any more money out of them. They're just here on a casual basis. But I learned you don't know anything about anyone and who they are and who they know and who they're connected to. Not that I chatted to people because I thought I can get something from them. I just chatted to people because I just wanted to improve my communication skills, let people know, practice my introduction, get to know people, practice my listening skills, all those types of things. And I started chatting to this gentleman, and his name was David. I said, hey David, how you going? Where are you from? So I'm from Canberra. I said, oh, well, welcome to the Gold Coast, having a great holiday. I said, I'm here with my family, yada, yada, yada. We started chatting away. So what do you do, David? And he says, well, I'm the manager of the Australian Institute of Sport, and we look after all the Australian Olympic teams. I said, wow, tell me about that. So rather than me jumping straight in and telling him, oh, I'm a strength and conditioning coach and you can use me, yada, 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 just find everything about him. He started telling me about what he does, and I said, well, that's really interesting. What a coincidence. He says, why is that? He says, well, I'm actually a strength and conditioning specialist, and I specialise in the training of elite athletes to help them reach their peak performance for their sport. My company is Sports Elite. Well, it's really great to meet someone of the same field. And we started, building a little bit of a relationship, but nothing too strong. Didn't come in, hey, you have to hire me or anything like that. I just got to know him. I got his details, and I said, give me a card, and maybe when I'm down in Canberra, because that's where he's from, Canberra, I can look you up and we can connect and yada yada. So really no conditions, but it was just an investment, an introduction to get to know one by their first name basis. What was interesting down a year down the track, that actually became quite an important connection. It really opened up a big door for me. So step number one is think of who you want to become. Right? Think of that vision and who you want to be training with, because my vision at that time was training elite athletes. So who do you want to train? Is it local? Is it global? Do you want to be a travelling trainer with a sports team around the nation, whatever it might be? Visualise that. We call that goal setting, right? And then when you've decided to get a clear picture of that, then start to act like that and behave like that and present like that and educate it like that and learn it and learn like that. So do all of those things, because at that time when I decided that, I started to study strength and conditioning from all different sources. Now, we didn't have the internet then, and YouTube and Facebook and Google, none of that existed. So I had to go and find places where I could subscribe to get information from. So I subscribed to, at that time, the National Library for Sports Information, which was down in Canberra, and I used to prescribe to all the latest research and strength and conditioning, and once a month a little brown package would come, and it would be all these research studies, original research studies, and they'd send me basically an index of all the ones for the upcoming month, and I'd pick the ones out, and I'd handwrite them in, I'd lick the stamp, put it on there, mail it away, then a month later the next one would come, and I'd pick the studies that was relevant to my vocation of what I was specialising in. I also linked into the National Strength Conditioning Association in the United States, and I subscribed to their journals. They have a general journal and they have a scientific journey, so they'd come also to me once a month. So I'd stay on top of the latest training methods and the latest science of training, because that's what I did. I specialised in that area, and if you're going to be a specialist in that area, then you have to be educated in that particular area. Now, I wasn't necessarily getting any formal qualifications from it. I was just learning as much as I want, because that's what an elite strength and conditioning coach would do, is they would actually learn, they would know their stuff, right? So I knew my stuff at university, but it wasn't necessarily specific to sport, and I'd forgotten it all anyway. So I was always endeavouring to self-educate myself, because I also learned is success comes when preparation meets opportunity. And even though I had a couple of opportunities, say with Brett Martin, and I also had a small group, I had already gathered around about 12 athletes that I was training at that time and designing programs for. There was the range from squash players to rugby league players to sprinters, and another client of mine called Martin, he was a professional sprinter, and I had to train him. So just from word and mouth and me being out there and putting it out to the universe, I gathered about 12 personal training clients that I was looking after. Then I had all these other things on the back burner, such as David from the Australian Institute of Sport. I was self-educating myself. I came across there was an exam that you could sit in America called the CSCS, the Certified Strength and Conditioning certification. And I thought, wow, if I could do that, that would give me another credible qualification. So I studied for that, and I went over the US and I sat the exam. So I invested a fair bit of money into my future. To me it's an investment. So I ended up becoming a strength and conditioning, a CSCS, a strength and conditioning specialist. So you can put that after your name. So what was interesting is that, fortunate for me, I got sacked from the gym. My job at the gym, I lost that job, which is my security net, which is a challenge. And I won't go into the deeper details of that, but it's the best thing that's ever happened, is because I was running this business on the side, they saw it may have been a bit of a conflict of interest, and the manager was wise enough to know that that's where my true passion was, so she decided to release me, sack me from that job, and so I can go and chase my passion. So her name was Sharon. I always thank her for that, for releasing me, because she said, why aren't you doing this full time? I said, well, I'm going to transition, and that was accelerated very quickly. Now I had to succeed, because I had now been pushed into the deep end, and yes, I had 12 personal training clients, but that wasn't enough to get me to where I wanted to get, or even pay my bills at that particular time. So then I learnt from other people that, from the gym where I was at, they put on this seminar to promote memberships at the gym. And basically what they did is they put the seminar, it's a healthy lifestyle seminar. They've got specialists in different areas of physiotherapy, and a specialist in nutrition, and a specialist in psychology, and a specialist in exercise. And they basically marketed it to the local community, and the community came in and they listened to all these experts on how to be fit, healthy and strong from a panel of experts. And then they gave them a free week at the gym, and then they signed up gym members. And I thought, that's a kind of cool idea. And the manager at the time, she actually got the idea from a peak performance marketing newsletter. And I thought, well, if I can run a seminar and I can get a panel of experts, obviously one of those experts will be me, and then I have this panel and I can promote it in the local community and all the sporting teams, and then their coaches and their managers, and they can come and they can listen to this panel of experts, and they'll give me an opportunity to promote myself as a strength and conditioning specialist. So, long story short, I came up with the name Peak Performance in Sports Seminar Series. And I like the name Peak Performance in Sport Seminar Series. Come and learn from a panel of experts leading their fields in the nation and all areas that's going to help you and your team reach this peak performance and win championships. And over time, what I did is I looked for other specialists at that level, the national level, training athletes, and invite them to have the honour to sit on the panel of experts for this big seminar series which I was running in this 5-star hotel. So I booked a room in a 5-star hotel. Understand I didn't have much money at that time because I'd just been sacked and I was just struggling away, but I booked this room, and then I said, yep, okay, so there's a room. I had to put a deposit of $50, which virtually emptied the bank account, so I put the deposit down, and then I went, now I need to get the panel. So I linked into a colleague who I'd met once, a guy called Michael Payoff. He was a sports physiotherapist at the time, and I just happened to meet him and got introduced to him. I started chatting to him, so I called him up. I said, it's Kerry here. And he said, yes. He says, as you probably know, that I'm a strength and conditioning specialist for my company, Sports Elite. And he said, no, I didn't know that. So let me tell you about that. But the reason why I'm contacting you is because I invite you to be on this panel because you're one of Australia's leading sports physiotherapists. You look after the Queensland State of Origin rugby team and all sorts of other national teams. Would you be like to be on this panel to talk to hundreds of people and coaches on the latest on sports physiotherapy? And he went, wow, well, that sounds great. So he wasn't attracted to me. He wasn't saying, wow, this guy's great. What he was attracted to is what I was building, which is this seminar, which is bigger than me. And that's what he was attracted to. And he see there's an opportunity to promote himself and his business. So I gave him what we call a whiffum, an opportunity to promote himself in my seminar, which I happened to be there on the panel naturally. And he says, he said, look, who else is on the panel? I said, well, we have a variety of options available. Do you have any ideas? He said, what you call Dr. Paul Rumson. He's a sports physician for so many national sporting teams. I said, fantastic. So I called Dr. Paul Rumson. I said, Dr. Paul Rumson, this Michael Payoff asked me to give you a call. So how is Michael? He's fantastic. And so I used that connection to open up that door, and I invited him on. And he said, yes, that sounds great. If Michael's on it, I'm on it. And he says, why don't you give so-and-so a call? Before you know it, they were referring people to me, but not to me, but to the Peak Performance in Sports Seminar. So basically, over time, I started to collect a tract, not me personally, but what I was building, an interest in what I was doing. And then I called up David from the Australian Institute of Sport, and he sort of vaguely remembered me, and I said, look, we have got this big seminar, we've got the sports physician and the sports physiotherapy for all these national sporting teams. I'd love for you to be there as a representative for the Australian Institute of Sport to talk about sports management for the careers of professional athletes. And he said, oh, it'll be an honour to come. So he was prepared to fly out for the seminar because one of his roles, his positions is to promote sport in Australia. Then he said, hey, why don't you call Dr. Ian Liner? He's a sports psychologist for the Australian Rugby Union and the Australian Institute of Sport and the Australian Diving Team and yada yada. Before I know, I'm calling out Dr. Ian Liner. His son also was the 5'8" Wallaby, played 5'8" for the Wallabies back in the 90s. Michael Liner, so he was well connected there. He says, why don't you call Rhonda Anderson? She's a sports dietitian. So I said, wow, Rhonda, I'll give her a call. Hey, Rhonda, it's Kerry here. Dr. Ian Liner, referred me to you to ask you to if you wanted to be on this panel with David Keaton and Dr. Ian Liner and all the other. And he says, well, if they're on there, of course I'll be on there. So before you know it, it just started to build momentum. Now I had my panel of experts, and guess who was the strength and conditioning specialist on the panel? It was me, and we all had 20 minutes to do a presentation on the latest in our particular fields. So then I devised up a little flyer. A good friend of mine, David, who was a manager of another club, David Hatch, and he had a Mac, one of the first Mac computers. We're going back, and he was a Mac DOS, so he actually helped me, and I looked at this computer, I've never seen a computer before, and he came up with a little flyer, and then I basically went to at that stage we called the yellow pages and the white pages, and I just hand-mailed everything out to all the local sporting clubs and their coaches and handwritten with the staff, and I tracked as many as I can of the names of the coaches of the team so I can personalise it as much as possible. And there's a great little flyer saying, you know, a peak performance in sports seminar series on how to develop your team and your individual players to peak performance without overtraining and injury, and there's a panel of experts. So after I mailed out to all the local sporting clubs in the city and personalised it, one of the other things which I did, which was suggested to me by a colleague of mine, and they said, "Are you going to do a press release?" Now, I had no marketing training or business skills, and I didn't know what a press release was. And he said, "That's where you alert the press, you know, the papers and the radio and the TV of what's happening, and they'll cover it, you know, if the story's big enough." So what I did is I faxed out, because back in those days we didn't have email, we didn't have that technology, but we did have fax machines. So I had to sort of teach myself how to use a fax machine because I'd never used one before, and I faxed out a press release to all the papers, all of the radio stations and the TV outlets, or the TV stations, not expecting what to come back. And what was interesting, in the coming week leading up to the event, I started getting phone calls from the local radio station, the newspapers and the TV station. So before you know it, Kman's little Googan, he's been interviewed on the radio, he's been interviewed on the TV, and he's been interviewed by the newspapers to put stories in the papers, which is all free marketing. That's just called free advertising, because the event's big enough that it'd be of special interest to put into the newspaper or on the radio station or on the TV. So before you know it, my little town, from a sports conditioning from a sports conditioning point of view and a sports point of view, in a short period of time I became quite a little famous little icon, talking about this huge event, because I promoted the event as a huge event. You know, the first time a massive peak performance in sports seminar has been held at the 5-star hotel, and I picked a 5-star hotel conference room because that gave the perception that it was really, really important. I didn't, you know, run it down in the local church hall. I used a 5-star hotel, and before you know it, wow, this must be big if it's a 5-star hotel. And look at the panel of experts, wow, it must be big. This is big, we've got to cover this, the media has to cover this. And before you know it, I get lots of free exposure, lots of PR, lots of free advertising and marketing. That event started to attract, and before you know it, when the day came, I remember it was in February when I ran the seminar, February 6th, because you never forget those days, because the start of the year, start of the season, and I had over 200 people come to the seminar. So naturally, when I'm up there on the panel with all these, you know, the elite sports physios and sports physicians and sports managers and sports psychologists and sports dietitians, and here I am, little Kman McEvoy, who has a degree and really not much of a track record, straight away they view me as if I'm one of them. And from that launched a huge interest in what I was doing, and I ended up becoming a strength and conditioning coach for a number of sporting teams, lots of elite athletes, and David Keating asked me to work for the Australian Institute of Sport, so I started working with Olympic sporting teams, so my career catapulted. But that wasn't luck, you know, that was where preparation meets opportunity. And who did the preparation? I did. I created a landscape to put myself in that environment, in that space, so people wanted to train with me. And my credibility wasn't necessarily built on my qualification or my experience, it was basically built on my association. But I worked hard to build all those connections. Now, understanding that, you know, I now have to perform, I have to produce the goods. You know, when I'm looking after Olympic athletes, they have to start winning, otherwise, you know, it's all talk and no walk. So from there, what you can do is that you can maybe you know, run seminars, or you may put something together where you promote a seminar, you get a couple of speakers in, and hey, if you want me to come and talk, because now I have lots of lists of credible achievements in terms of not just myself being a world champion in my sport, but also training other world champions in sports, world champion teams and Olympic gold medalists. And for example, one of my graduates, Josh Blakely, who runs Acton 3 Performance Athletes, he has his own elite sports conditioning centre in Auckland, And when he did the program with us, he was only 17, 18 years of age, and he wanted to become a strength and conditioning coach for elite athletes. And a lot of people say, well, you're a bit too young for that, but that's what he wanted to do, and we helped him along the way, and his business plan was designed around that. And now he trains Olympic level athletes and world champions in a variety of different sports in his centre in Browns Bay in Auckland. And he, on a regular basis, he runs little in-house seminars, and he gets speakers in. The last one I did, which was not last year, the year before, I believe. I was there talking about strength and conditioning. He had a sports psychologist and a mindset person, and he had this, and he had different speakers, and he invited different sporting teams to come and his own teams and his own athletes to educate them. But that lifts the interest that people will say, wow, you know, he must be really good because he has all these things going on, where there's activity people want to be a part of. So there's nothing stopping you from creating your own seminars, whether that being creating a seminar or conference in a hotel or convention centre where people come to you, or you have your own facility where you run seminars in that facility, or you run them out of a gym or a community hall. It doesn't really matter. Work out how can I promote myself and associate myself with like-minded people that we all give each other credibility, and create what we call a magic moment marketing event, which we talk a lot about in the program. And once you get a bit of momentum, then you can start using your achievements, qualifications, your associations, and all of those fit into the mix of how to promote yourself. So from there, I was training Olympic sporting teams, and one of the local teams in my area was the national level baseball team. So I thought I wanted to train them. So when I promoted myself to them, it was more direct marketing. This is create an event and people come to you. So I targeted that particular team because I wanted to be the strength and conditioning coach for that team. And I know that team at that time didn't have a strength and conditioning coach. But they had some pretty good players in there. So I researched the team. So the first thing, if you're going to work with a team, if you want to target market a team, then you have to research and find out who the coach is and who the general manager is. And it's easier to do these days. It's a lot harder in my day because we didn't have any internet or Google searching or Facebook or YouTube. None of that existed. So a lot of the stuff I had to research was, you know, through the hard yards. But these days, but you can just Google and you can find out names and how long they've been in their sporting history, so you can customize everything. So when I approach and I rather than just knock on their door, I sent them a taster, what I call a taster. So I found out that the head coach was Adrian Marr, and Adrian Marr was used to play top level baseball in the United States. He was the best pitcher in Australia. He was the captain and the coach. So he played, but he also coached the team. So I worked out who he was, did a bit of research by asking around, and I customized a little proposal, and I sent him a package. And it was in an express post package. So if something comes in your doorstep in an express post and you have all this other mail, which one are you opening up first? Well, you're going to open up the express post because it must be really important. And guess what was in that express post package was my little proposal. So I put a proposal together. It wasn't too long because I know people don't want to read too much. It has to be maybe top 3 pages. And what I basically did is I went and bought a baseball. And I knew that the Daco Dolphins was the name of the team that competed in the national championship. It hadn't won the national championship. And it was really a breeding ground for future Australian players to go and play in the major league. So it was a fairly important sport for those who were passionate about that sport, and it was a stepping stone to get to the major league. So I got the baseball and I wrote on it in clear, nice writing, the year and national champions. And I put that in the proposal, and then I put a photo of him on the front, pitching in one of his pitches. And I can't remember exactly what I said, but it was basically, it was basically a proposal of how to get your team in its peak physical conditions so it can maximise its chances to win a national championship. So we had a headline that really sparked their interest. And Adrian also coming from the USA, and strength and conditioning wasn't a big thing back in those days, remember. Now we're talking, very early 90s when this happened. So I had to sort of make a whiff on what's in it for me, and it was all about getting his players to their peak physical conditions so they can perform to their best to help them win a national championship without injury. And that was my whole angle, and there's a headline there, there's a little introduction of myself, basically, let someone who's walked in your shoes as an athlete and helped other athletes like yourself win their national championship. And obviously in that, I used all the things that made me credible, means I was an international level kickboxing champion. I had, at that time, trained Olympic sporting teams. I had an Olympic gold medalist, a couple of Olympic gold medalists up under my belt. And I also had a degree, a Bachelor of Human Movement Studies, specialising in sports conditioning. So was the degree specialised in sports conditioning? No, it wasn't. But I specialised in sports conditioning. And when I was doing my degree, everything I did was all about sport. Everything I saw was sport. And everything I did in my spare time was about sport. I'd be reading the journals, I'd be reading the scientific papers that were. So I was a specialist. I had a general qualification, but I specialised in sports conditioning for elite athletes. So straight away that really tweaked his interest. So because when he got this package, the Express Post, and it had a big lump in it. So he's really curious what it is. And he opened the lump and all of a sudden out comes a ball with the year national champions. He went, wow, that's it. So I put in his hand, in his eyes, what he wanted. Because he wanted to win a national champion, because they'd never won a national championship at that stage. And then it says, make sure that your players are at blah, blah, I can't remember the headline, so you can maximise your chances of winning a national championship. Let me, someone who's walked in your shoes, and it was about 2 pages, but it had a picture of him. If there's something of a picture of him on it, of course he's going to read it, because he's on the proposal. If someone came to you and had pictures of you on it, would you read it? Of course you would. It's what's in it for me. Now at that stage it might be ego or vanity, he wants to read it, but as he read it he started to say, hey, this can't just help me and make me feel good, but this is going to help my team win a championship. It's going to make me look good, because I'm the coach who trained the team to win a championship. So at the end I said, I'll give you time to go through this and I'll give you a call next Tuesday. So I always put a day, and I never put Monday. I always learnt that from, I'm not sure where I learned, never Monday, because Monday's a busy day. It's a busy day to get back in and people, but by Tuesday, they're probably in that mode of into the week. They're not on Friday where they're closing down. Not that it will make any difference to sport, because the baseball played on weekends anyway, but Tuesday seems to be the best day from what I was taught from marketing people, that's the day to call them. So I called him up and said, look, I'd love to meet you. Yeah, and I came in, we had a bit of a chat, we built some rapport, I asked him about him, I'd already done a bit of research, hey, you didn't quite make the major league, you made the level below, and tell me about that, yada yada, and before you know, you really started liking me, because if they don't like you, they're not going to hire you, so you have to be a likeable person. I've learnt that from Mark McCormick, is it's all about building the relationship before you work out what you can do with for each other, and then create that into a transactional agreement. So he had to bring that past the general manager, and the general manager said, look, we have no budget for this whatsoever, and we organised a time to meet. So after chatting with me and the benefits, because it's going to make him look good, because as a general manager, he's won a national championship. So over time and getting to know me, he talked himself into saying, hey, yes, okay, let's get this done. So basically what I'm saying, it's not about me, it's about some of the things I did. First of all, what I did is, first thing is to think of who you want to become. Second thing is, be that person. Start acting and presenting. So everywhere I went, I wore my uniform. I had my sports and conditioning. So where I was a walking billboard. So I acted and behaved in that way. Third is start to introduce yourself to everyone as that person. No matter how, not on a conditional basis, just anyone. It just so happens that over time, you will come across the right person, because the universe puts it out there. You put it out to the universe, it will deliver. And before you know, I'm talking to Brett Martin in the gym, having a chat to him. I come across David Keaton. And all of a sudden, you're starting to build relationships and a bit of momentum. And you can pick up a few clients here and there. And before you know it, you come across a client that you can say, hey, we can do something special together, like myself and David with the seminar. So then I proactively created an event that was bigger than me, that I was in, that made me look like I'm big, even though I'm not. But I'm in a big. If you hang out with big people, people will think you're big. If you hang out with big people, people will think you're big. So that is where your circle of influence. There's an old saying, is your future will be determined by what you read and the people you hang out with. Well, I was reading a lot, studying a lot, researching a lot. Later on, I ended up doing a master's degree in sports and conditioning, because that's my area of expertise. That's going to be my dedicated vocation. Things have changed since then, but I spent a good 10 years doing it. So before you know it, I'm gaining momentum. I put it on the event, all of a sudden, now I'm training national sporting teams. Then I started to cherry pick the teams that I wanted to train with or wanted to train, such as the baseball team. And I did a target marketing approach to it, where I start to use all my marketing skills, because as I said before, how you market what you do many times is more important than what you do. Otherwise, you'll be the greatest strength and conditioning coach that no one ever met. You can't sell a secret. You have to be able to market yourself. So that can happen from day one. Don't wait till you're a champion to act like a champion. Act like a champion and you become a champion. Don't wait till you're successful to act successful. Act successful now. And people say, well, they're successful, they're going places, they must know what they're doing. They present well, they look well, they talk well, they act well, they walk well. Well, and they're hanging out with great people. So, hey, they must be great. So when I want a strength and conditioning coach, who am I going to go to? I'm going to go to that person. So be that person. Be that person when the time comes and they need a strength and conditioning coach. You're the person that comes to the forefront of their mind, because they met you somewhere, anywhere, I don't know. Could be anywhere, could be in the gym, could be in the street, could be in the cafe. It could be an event. So hang out where those people hang out. So the other thing is, what I started to attend is different sports lunches and banquets and charity events for sports people, where those people go, general managers and captains, and they go to, and they have them all the time. In your area, I'm sure they do, little events, sporting events, dinners, lunches, stuff like that. So I'd invest to go there and mingle and get to know, because we call that networking. But you're networking with the people who may want your services, but they're not going to know about your services if you don't network with them. So many times I've got lots of opportunities from just knowing people, but I got to know them not knowing who they were, if that makes sense. So if you don't know who they are or who they're connected to, then just get to know everyone. If they're in front of you, just get to know them, and you'd be amazed of how many people who know people that can help you in your journey, because you asked and you showed interest of them with no conditions, nothing attached, because you were interested in them, because people don't care about you until they know how much you care about them. So there is some simple ways, very simple ways, because I didn't have the complex ways back in those days to market myself. But now you can do all of that you can create a social media page, and you can create an Instagram page and a Facebook page and a LinkedIn page. So now you can actually start to put lots of great content, lots of marketing material, do lots of seminars, online free education. So it might be training tips or strength and conditioning tips. So when you create your Facebook page or you create your Instagram page, then you want to make it proactive. So you can start to give and you shall receive. So many times you have to give to receive. So when you use marketing these days, there's lots of, certainly I'd highly recommend that you target the local sporting teams and the local coaches and the local general managers of the sporting teams, and go where they go and invite them to your gym, or invite them to your event, or invite them to, and even if they don't come, that's okay, because at least if you invite them, they remember you because they got an invite. Now if you're going to do a target market, I sent, for example, Adrian a baseball, because that was relevant to him. So you can customize what you put into what we call fat mail. Fat mail, we use that, we talk about this in the program, but you can customize that to the sporting event or the sport, whether it be, obviously if you're kayaking, you wouldn't put a kayak in there. But yeah, you could quite easily, for example, go down to the local $2 shop or those cheap places, and they have all those little, they're cheap, but they're kind of cool, gold medals or gold trophies or championship trophies with championship team or something like that. And when you do a direct mail to a team, because you want to link into that coach, then you put a champion trophy or cup, whatever it might be, or World Cup or whatever it might be, and you put that in your mail to send, and when they get express post, or you put into a big coloured, not a normal envelope, but a big coloured, big oversized one, because it stands out. You want to stand out, because imagine how much mail they get on a weekly basis. They probably check their mail once a week, and there's a big pile of white envelopes with windows. They open them last because they're the bills, and white envelopes with just generically printed off a printer, they're last because they're not important. But it's a coloured package, handwritten, maybe with stars on it, championship or stickers. And then that could be, you could put that into an express post. Because now they're really going to open it. They go, wow, what's going on here? And they open it up and there's something fatty in there, and they open up and it's a gold cup. And the headline might be, make sure that your players are at their elite physical conditions, so that's going to maximise your chances to win the World Cup or whatever it might be, or win the championship, and link it into the cup. So they'll go, and some people say, well, that's a bit corny, but at least it stands out and they remember it. Because if you're in one of those little white envelopes, you're last to be opened, and you're going to end up in the rubbish bin anyway. So the cup, and if it's a really cool cup, they'll probably put it up on the shelf somewhere, and then you may put your logo on the back of it, or something like that. You may even customise it if you want. You know, sports elite strength and conditioning specialist, whatever you want to do. But what I'm thinking is, think out of the box. You need to stand out. If you stand out, if you're just one of the white sheep in the herd, no one's going to see you. Be the big red sheep, or the big pink sheep, or the big gold sheep, because that's the gold medal or the gold cup they want to win. So there's some direct marketing ideas that you can use. Now, I shared some of my experiences, so you know I'm not just talking from a book, I'm talking from my experiences. And I didn't actually learn those tools, particularly in a book or anywhere, but I just used a bit of common sense, what some other people were doing, some mentors of mine that helped me along the way, and showed me how to do that. And it served me well, because it wasn't, within 1 year, I was training Olympic sporting teams. And within a number of years, I had gold medalists under my belt. The baseball team, by the way, that very next year I was strength and conditioning, they won the national championship. Now, did they win because of my strength and conditioning? Of course they did. No, I'm only kidding. But I think that me being injected there to add that level of professionalism made all the players take it far more in a professional approach. So when they lifted all their game, not just because of the technical things I did, but because they saw a management team that were prepared to invest in them to help them become the best they can be. And a number of those players end up going to the United States. Trent Darrington, Paul Gorman, who were players, though some of them, Trent was a junior when I was working with him, and they've made the major league team or some of the big teams in the US. David Nilsson, I worked with him for 6 years here in the Milwaukee Brewers Major League Baseball team. He flew me over. I went to some of the games there, and I was training some of the Milwaukee Brewers Major League Baseball teams, who sent out to Australia a guy called John Jahar, and I was training. So I actually ended up being connected to a Major League Baseball team. So it's amazing how all these things can gain their own momentum, but you have to put the ball in play. If you don't put the ball in play, it won't gain any momentum. And the great book called The Snowball Effect by Warren Buffett, it's got nothing to do with sports, it's got about wealth creation, is that if you get things going, the snowball effect will occur. And investing, your compound interest will make the ball bigger and bigger and bigger, and before you know it, you're making more bigger money. In business or in life, if you put a ball, it might be a little marble to start with, but if you get the ball in play and you start rolling it, it will start gaining its own momentum. It will start to attract what's in its lane. It will track what's in its purpose. It will attract attention, and that will grow and get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and then it will grow its own momentum, and you won't have to seek work anymore or do any marketing anymore. People will be seeking you because you're now the big fish, and they'll be inviting you to present in their seminar to help them with their business. So it's a good place to be, but you have to be the marble first, and you've got to get it out of the bag, out of your head, put into play, and keep working on it and self-educating yourself and progressing yourself and getting better. Improve your communication, improve your craft, improve your business skills. If you do all of that, you'll be amazed what you can achieve. And I'll use Josh, for example, from Acton 3 Performance Athletes. When he first did the program, he was only 17 years of age, fresh out of school, and he just put things into play. And then he had an opportunity to work out of a little centre, then that grew into a bigger centre, then he's transitioned that into a gym, and that's gone into another bigger gym, and just last year he's gone into another gym, and his facilities now have grown not to just strength and conditioning elite athletes. He now has a fight club there, he has a Brazilian club, he has a powerlifting club, he has a boxing club, and he has all these things in play. If he goes back and when he was 17, think, could have I achieved this? By the time I'm my mid to late 20s, he said, no, how do I do that? Well, you can if you just get on the path. Remember, the journey of 1,000 miles starts with the first step. So don't worry about the last step. Don't worry about the 1,000 steps. Just worry about the first step and keep stepping into the direction of who you want to become and what you want to achieve. And if you keep stepping in that direction, you will gain momentum, the snowball effect. If you keep actively working on the body and the mind and all the skills and all the knowledge and getting all the experience to add to that, then that ball will just gain momentum. And before you know it, you will be, because my goal at the time when I first was, I wanted to be Australia's leading strength and conditioning coach, and I achieved that in a matter of 5 years because no one else was doing it, because everyone thought they couldn't do it. And I thought, well, why not? Someone has to do it. Why not me? And why not you?